It's always been a challenge since we came in. Gibraltar can be very difficult if you don't qualify for Europe, and even then, income opportunities. But we had a commitment, obviously, a very public commitment before last season of 20 million from Takashi Chang. I think it came to GBC and talked about it. And unfortunately, right before the season, after a first few payments were in. Um, we did not get the rest of the money. And it put us in a very difficult position. We communicated with the players at the time. And in turn, I found myself having to raise funds 5 days, before the season starts, all over again. Obviously, it was something that, from a public perspective, we were hesitant in telling the world that the 20 million commit didn't, just the person disappeared. And that was hard because people were so excited. I mean, they were like, wow, these guys trying to do the right thing. They've got this investment, built an entire structure around that investment. And, it was, so we ended up, bringing in some, investors, being partials. They came in roughly about, I think it was around 500,000 that got us through the season. And then we went into this off season with a lot of confidence. I've raised a lot more money than anyone could possibly imagine. I mean, we've gone through so much. At 62, from a $70,000 budget a year club with all volunteers to, one of the higher, budget clubs in the league, and that was all through just hard work and people believing in the mission.
So what was the
So
club
we went.
situation? Sorry, what was the club's financial situation when you applied and were given the license by the GFA to play in the Gibraltar League? On what basis were you given that license?
Yeah, well, we had financially gone through the season and covered every. I mean, Mel McKenzie is incredible. I can't give her more than enough credit. And obviously, our staff at the time was just we did all the things right. I mean, internally, our structure was very strong, very strong. That was important for me to professionalize this club. And so, obviously, we got the approval on the license. And looked to this season, actually went into the off season where everyone knew we were going to have to raise more money. That was a big thing. And when players came in, we wanted to be transparent about that. And I think the confidence was very high
So are you
because
saying
of how much.
did the players know about the financial situation?
Yeah, they knew we were in a raise. That doesn't put it on them. It puts it more on myself because I've been back against the wall so many times. What I mean, trying to push this over the line, and I think the confidence was really high. What I mean, I had raised probably over 2 million, I think, since being there, which is kind of unheard of considering I'm not a wealthy man, never have been, and I think we all believed it was going to happen. And even trying to when it was delayed and delayed, we thought we could get a guaranteed because we had guaranteed collateral, with UEFA payments. So we were communicating with banks, going through the process. I mean, it made perfect sense, but I think when that didn't get approved, it was a very grim time, for the club and myself. It was. I mean, you work constantly for something, and the last thing you want to see is people who believe in this, suffer. I mean, that's. I can't even tell you the highs and lows of thinking you've received the biggest, funding, signed agreement, by the way, but the biggest funding in the history of chronic traumatic encephalopathy in sports. And then to have nothing, and having to do it all over again, is
As
very
an
difficult.
American, I'm sorry, as an American, if you don't mind me asking you, do you think that you really understood what you were getting into? Gibraltar is a very, very small place. There are not as much money making opportunities here for clubs as there are elsewhere. Do you think that you came in with this vision for the headgear without really understanding what it is you were getting into?
Yeah, I mean, I did. I've always stayed true to this. I believe that even though we are in amidst a dark time, with our club, I do believe that my decision, was valid. I expect the challenges. I always expect a challenge, but Gibraltar's a beautiful place. When the culture, the people, everyone wears their heart on their sleeve, and they tell you, when they disagree with you. But what a beautiful thing when they no longer, disagree with you, when they see the effort, you know what I mean, and they see how committed you are, and then when things don't go well, they're going to tell you, and they get angry and frustrated. But those very same people, they treat everyone like family in so many ways. I mean, it's everything you need for something like this. If I could make it work in Gibraltar, it could work anywhere,
But
you know?
but effectively, you were running a team which didn't have money. The
Yeah.
investor pulled out.
Yeah.
Players were committed. It seems as though you were sort of running on a false premise.
No, actually, it was interesting because if the false premise was, um, I say the commitment financially, I mean, we had agreements, et cetera. All you can do as a CEO is try to be transparent in the process, It was never a false premise when we went through, each one of these situations. I mean, every one I fought and got the funding through, et cetera. Never pretended to be a rich guy. Always said that we were going to need support. And I think so players start believing in that, staff start believing it, that you can get through anything. But it's important to not run on a false premise. I mean, you have to be transparent, but it becomes false when you don't deliver. If the investment doesn't come in and I don't deliver, it's on me no matter what. You know what I
So
mean? And they suffer.
what's happening with the tax certificate now? And obviously, because of the
Yeah,
delay, the club has been docked some points. So can you just bring us up to date with what's happening with that?
absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. So the GFA has been working really well, and the tax office. Honestly, they've been incredible through this process. We've worked something out, obviously, with a payment and with players and some staff and the tax office as well. We've been able to coordinate. Things we would have utilized on the collateral loan now is actually, for UEFA is kind of crossing over and getting this sorted. And the communication and transparency from the tax office has been amazing, to be honest with you. And so we do feel that we're starting to get through this.
How much leg room do you have? I mean, do you have enough money to play the players until the end of the season?
Yeah, no. So we have what we're doing is a lot of the players who are on contracts and whatnot. We're working out agreements for them, buyouts. We have an incredible youth system run by David Ocello. And we've had players that, I mean, gosh, we almost beat Lincoln, what I mean, with like probably I think it was 4 or 5, 16 or 17-year-old, on the pitch, if I'm not mistaken. So bringing the youth players up and kind of going back to, at least until more investment comes, back more youth setup allows us to sustain, that's right now we have to sustain. We're not going to be able to compete at the level that we've been competing at.
Okay, and how confident are you that investment will come in? And do you think that the initial excitement about the headgear has sort of worn off, and those that showed an interest in the club and no longer seem to be interested?
Yeah, yeah,
What's happening with that?
yeah, interesting. So the investors who came in were very much small batch investors, I mean, doctors and, advocates, healthcare leaders. We never had like a Mark Cuban, which is interesting. He's from Pittsburgh. But I always say Mark Cuban could put $1 into the club, make a phone call, and we'd have 10 million in sponsors in an hour. So what's kind of interesting about that is the normalcy about it. So when we say as the headgear dipped, what I mean, or as the interest, no, we've normalized it. That's probably the greatest accomplishments I could possibly say. Players protested and then went out and played Lincoln all wearing headgear because it's like shin guards. It's just a part of who we are now.
Okay, so
So I do believe it'll come.
you
Yeah.
said that you're going to be looking for more investment. It's about sustaining the club rather
Yeah.
than competing at a high level. Do you think that this is a difficult period that you will be able to come out of? Are you still the right person to own this club?
Yeah. I believe so. I believe because our track record with all of the challenges. I mean, I would probably say independently, without a big money person, I've raised more money probably than any of those, any of the owners, and plus the reach. I mean, people kind of scoff at no, it's publicity, it's blah blah blah. When you're doing something special, and we had a 4.5 billion reach, I think it was, over the last year and a half. When I got the club, it was 100,000. I don't think there's any more way to honor Manchester 62 and its legacy than the whole world knowing who we are. And most of those stories are for all the right reasons. So Yeah, I mean, I absolutely believe it. I don't know if there's somebody out there more committed, and bringing us where we are. And like I said, with Mel McKenzie and members of staff, people like David Ocello. I mean, these are the right people, and they believe in this.
But
So
the one fact that remains is that you're in America. You're not here. Is
yeah.
your aim to sort of at some point be more connected physically with the club than you are at this moment?
Absolutely, absolutely. Actually, the hardest part with this financing is not being there. That's been hard. My first year, I was there for 10 out of the 12 months, I think. It was very difficult on my family. Um, Next year, I was there for a significant amount of time. But I have, there's been a family emergency that I've had to deal with it that keeps me from going and going back. So it's a very serious thing, and I'll have to stay here for as long as I have to. You know what I mean? I'd rather be there. Everyone knows I'd rather be there. I mean, I even coached one of the Manchester 62 games my first year. I'm very much involved in. I love Gibraltar, and I wish I was there. I cannot wait to get back.
And finally, just your hopes for the future of the club.
Yeah, I think I believe that we have faced so many challenges, and yet we have kept the core and the culture. We became people thought it was all about the headgear, and then we had our most successful year in the entire UEFA era. Or probably maybe the second most, but we championship group 2 years in a row, et cetera. I mean, we built something that a lot of people kind of maybe laughed, snickered at, and I believe the future of the club lies on our commitment to the mission. We're the only world incubator for health and safety in the world. You know what I mean? That's a professional football team. I mean, that's the conversation I'm going to be having with a lot of sponsors, et cetera. I think healthcare companies should be keeping this club up because of how much of our impact is. They get the awareness that they need, and we can not just be an incubator for us. We're an incubator for whether like Bupa Health or other companies like that. Incredible healthcare companies that could utilize a sports team willing to customize what that data and study is to save lives. And that's a
Has,
big thing.
has that caught on, the headgear? Has that caught on?
Yeah, I would say this: we've normalized it within the clubs. I mean, one of the most I said proudest moments. I know it sounds crazy, but after I just did an interview recently, and the interviewer said, Michael, they all wore the headgear after a 2-minute protest. It became shin guards. It was just normalized, because I don't have to convince anymore. We've brought in former players from Chelsea, Real Betis, you name it. We've answered every question that has come out about it, and now nobody says anything really about the headgear. It's the goal is to make it not part of the news, to make it something that, I mean, if a team protesting financial delays, in payments, that all wears protective headgear, doesn't even consider that after a 2-minute protest, then any club in the world could adapt something like this. Anyone. And that didn't come from me, that came from the interviewer. So
And Michael, very, very quickly, as a final question, is the club going to survive?
it 100% believe that this club will not only survive, but we will move out of these dark times. You know what I mean? And this is Manchester 62. You know what I mean? And Lincoln may be the club that wins championships and so on and so forth, but we are the story for a reason. We've strived to do something different, and the history and the recent and past history will define our future.